What unsupervised childhood activities did you participate in that probably should have killed you? Swimming in the drainage canal by my house. Barbed wire. Horse shit. Concrete. Fertilizer runoff, etc. How many nipples you got there, bucko? Theoraders now. Thank you very much. My cousins and I, from the time we were toddlers, were just sent out into the forest in the morning with nothing but whistles to scare the bears. One time I chased a bear. I swear to God my grandpa tells us the same story. Is this some time rap shit going on here? We used to dig tunnels through the hay that they stored in the barn that would be like 10 meters high in places. The tunnels would regularly collapse and we'd just shrug it off and dig another. Quite the same activity but with snow. Few times in news I've read about child suffocating into a tunnel they made that collapsed. Extra bonus if you could find a half sheet of rotted plywood to use for the roof to your cave and cover it with snow. More points if you let a homeless man pretend to be the monster in the cave who would chase you if you strayed too close. We used to play with chemicals in my neighbor's garage, like combine all different kinds of chemicals we could find. I would assume lawn care and car chemicals in her garage into a hole in the cement floor. At least we were smart or lucky enough to keep the garage door open. My greatest discovery at around 12 years old doing that was finding out brake fluid and chlorine for the pool combust when mixed. Soon my friends and I were doing all kinds of crazy shit with the mixture. The best was driving a pipe into the ground a few feet long and putting the chlorine and brake fluid in there and watching the dragon fire shoot out the pipe. It's not an immediate reaction. Kind of a slow burn till it bursts into a furious hellfire. I grew up in Kigali, Rwanda. After the 1994 genocide there were landmines all over the place. We used to walk to our primary school, about 5 kilometers. As kids we used to play soccer on the street while walking to school. So one day the ball fell in the bush as always, and I went for it. Little did I know that the stone-like thing under the ball was a notorious landmine. I got the ball and I asked the other older kid what it was. 10 minutes later the entire neighborhood was on site talking about how I just cheated death. Never will I ever forget it. If I stepped on the mine that afternoon, I wouldn't be writing this today. Climbing trees way too high. When I was a kid, we used to toss apples under the tree, climb the tree, and when the horses that my grandparents raised would come to eat the apples, we would leap on the horses. Most of the time the horse would buck and take off running with a kid on its back. How are you alive? This is nuts. Previous owner of my childhood home left a bunch of random chemicals in the garage. He was into home improvement and stuff, and my siblings tooled to playing mad scientist. Several instances of unknown gases spreading through the garage later, and we are still around. Let's play Breaking Bad! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Sandra. The kids have made meth. I grew up within the boundaries of Tufts University's campus. At the end of my street was a campus building that was 6 stories high. I remember climbing to the top of the fire escape, stepping over the railing onto the slate-pitched roof. I held onto the dormer and made my way on top of that roof. Then I would walk up to the pitch of the roof and straddle the pitch and look out on the Boston skyline. I was under 10 years old, well over 100 feet up. One slip and I was sidewalk pizza. I can't believe I survived being a latchkey kid in the 80s. We did the same thing on the roof of main building at Vassar in the 80s. I'll bet they've got all access to the roof closed off now. A friend and I also fenced there on the catwalk. We were college students, so no excuse for stupidity. Oh man, I could write a book about it. Growing up in the Rust Belt and playing in the industrial relics, I'm still surprised I'm somehow alive. Plus my buddy's grandpa was a gunsmith, so we had black powder. You can imagine what we did with that. Also swimming in the river and ducking around by the train tracks. Yeah, I don't know how I even still have all my OEM fingers and toes. How many pennies did you put on the train tracks so a train would smash them flat? The Great Rock Wars. In grade school we played this during recess. We just whipped pebbles at each other. Hard. Also, I pay homage to my fallen 4th grade friend. May we never forget you. We left a lot of good men behind on that playground. I can still see little Jimmy. He caught a rock right in the cheek. The school nurse did what she could, but he was finished. He went home too soon that day. But alas, recess continued. For Jimmy, our comrades would scream as they hurled the sharpest rocks they could find. Lawn darts. Except no one was throwing em at the rings. Nope, toss em straight up in the sky and scatter. Lol, we played scattered darts too. At the 80s/early 90s. We had a mini crossbow we'd put full size arrows in and shoot it straight up and basically play chicken. These answers are all terrible, but I'm laughing like a loon at all of them. How are any of y'all alive? The answer, of course, is that the ones who aren't here to answer. Lol. Eater, honestly not sure why I deserve an award, but I'll take it. Thank you. I used to have free reign in the woods behind the base housing at Fort Bragg. My friends and I would ride our bikes through the woods for hours in the summer at the tender age of 7 like it wasn't a big deal. I'd never let my 7-year-old now wander around the woods like that nowadays. One day we found a vine that was dangling next to a ravine and do a Tarzan Juno across it. It was probably a good 30-foot drop to the bottom of a pit filled with jagged rock and dubious puddles of ike. I wasn't supposed to show my parents, but I did one day and they freaked out and cut it down. My friends were mad at me for like a minute until they all agreed it was indeed incredibly dangerous and for the best. Perhaps the most logical conclusion I have ever seen kids come to in my life. Back in the old days when folks didn't lock doors, my dumbass used to go in my neighbors' houses and wander about while they slept. Then it'd get scared and leave. Very dangerous as a 6-year-old young lady. Edit. It was 1994. My parents were asleep and I was stealthy. It was maybe the same 4 to 5 family houses on my block and I never got caught. I have many angels. Okay, but why? At 6, I was mortified to even look into my neighbor's backyard, let alone break into people's houses at night. Growing up in a family that hunted, it wasn't uncommon to find 22 bullets in the garage or in hunting bags. My brother would take bullets that he found, place them on a log, and then smash them with a hammer. Luckily he outgrew that phase. I hate to be a one-upper, but we would do something similar with 22 and shotgun shells. We were preteens, owners of Red Ryder BB guns, and unsupervised rounds of ammunition. We would get bored at plinking cans, birds, and squirrels. So we lined up shotgun shells and 22 rounds and shot them with our BB guns. We would routinely have to dodge the 22 casings shooting back at us after we hit the primer. Looking back on it, I'm really surprised none of us were seriously injured. Yeah, you cold shot your eye out. In the 50s and 60s you could get chemistry sets complete with a vial of mercury and other dangerous chemicals. Man, it was fun playing with that mercury and mixing various chemicals to see what would happen. Next we'll talk about the wood burning set and the toy that came with a cauldron to melt metal and pour it into molds to make soldiers and whatnot. All while mom was upstairs fixing dinner. Growing up in the 90s, we basically lived at our local park, and there was a foundation still there from the 60s of an old toilet block which had been blown up by my dad when he was a kid. RIP to the folks that engaged in these activities, but never made it to this thread. Yes, I feel like both my parents' generation, boomers, and grandparents' generations, silent and greatest, depending on the grandparent, knew a lot of kids when they were growing up who died in childhood due to accidents. I feel like every older person can name a few classmates from their youth who never made it to adulthood. Lots of falls from high places and lots of accidental drownings in particular. Now, it's, thankfully, unusual enough that an accidental child death is usually huge news in a community. Edit. I just wanted to make a point about survivorship bias over the generations. And then I wake up to 20+ very gruesome child death story comments in my messages. I'm German and I heard way too many stories of kids messing around with undetonated bombs and ammunition spread over the country. In and after the war, there was this one story, 9 to 10 siblings and all kids found a bomb near our village, and while messing around, it exploded. They are all dead. My mom told me on the cemetery, cause I saw the gravestone. I do not really think I ever got over this story. Fire. Lots of fire. I almost burned down the house in Mexico when I was like 8. I set a fake plant on fire and ran away. Mom was cooking next door and put the flames out. In the US I burned a hole in the carpet in my room when I was in middle school. Covered that up with small pink carpet. Parents never found out until I moved out. Me too. I lit a match, then got scared. So my stupid child brain thought throw it in the kitchen cabinet drawer, made of wood. One of the favorite places to hang out when I was a teenager was a disused railway bridge on the edge of the town. The land had begun to reclaim the top and was all overgrown, except for a small part in the center. There were amazing views of the town from there, and we used to head up there most summer evenings and relax with some smokes and alcohol. It was fairly well hidden from public and the police, so we used to get up to no good. One dude who was irritating enough used to tag along, as he was the younger brother one of the girls. He was sat on the 1-foot wall looking down at the stream below, and this lad grabbed him and dangled him over the edge. Was a pretty big drop down to the rocky stream underneath, maybe 30 feet. The dickhead let go of the poor lad's hand, so he grabbed the wall of the bridge. Then he let go of his other hand. Again, he clung onto the wall for dear life, then fell. Luckily, there was no serious damage, other than his soaked clothes. The lad who dangled him over didn't hang round with us after that. We made sure of it. My brother and I would bend our mattresses in half and then sit on them, release them and fling ourselves across the room into the wall. We were not bright children, but damn did we have fun. That sounds awesome. I'm gonna try that one. Playing on my grandma's house roof. An old ass house. Slates came off on their own. Edit. Once my cousin got stuck and my brother had to carry him down. It was so scary. Making snow forts. Fortunately my friend found my legs because I was panicking while suffocating. Some parents seem concerned their kids will have sex when they are teenagers. I'm terrified my kids will go off and do some of the things I used to do with friends and get unlucky and die. There was a train bridge near where I went to school. It went over a ravine with a shallow creek. We would climb underneath it. Drop. Michael. Let go. It's safe. Come on. Don't be such a baby. Apostrophe. I used to rollerblade off the roof and onto the trampoline. It hurts to think about it now. I'm still shocked I never got hurt. Morning edit. Wow. So this is what it's like. My gold cherry. Now gone. Thank you for the awards. I'm glad everyone could share their trampoline stories. My backyard was lower than my front yard, so the back deck was 8 feet or so above the backyard. We would jump off onto the trampoline. Everyone had bad ideas involving a trampoline. Maybe this is why I wasn't allowed to have a trampoline. For a little bit it was a middle school fad to throw yourself off public buses as they were slowing down and do a roll on the sidewalk. I smacked my midsection on a telephone pole and had bruises for weeks lol. As fun as it really was, I'm still surprised how more of us didn't get seriously injured / killed on old school playground equipment. I'm 29 but I'm old enough to remember when playgrounds were filled with gravel, not wood chips or shredded rubber. Holy hell. Good thing small kids are shockingly resilient, because I know I face planted on those rocks more times than I can count. Edit. It has been brought to my attention that the wood chips were not much better. Either way, getting scraped up is part of being a kid, and life for that matter. Before paintball, we only had BB guns to shoot at one another. Needless to say, there weren't any fancy face masks or other protective gear. 40 years later, my parents were finally told the story of me using a pocket knife to remove the BB embedded in my kid brother's butt cheek. Setting everything on fire that I could get my hands on. I'm not a pyro, but I went through a phase when I was around 8 or 9 when I just lit shit on fire. Books, paper bags, toy cars, lawn furniture, Legos, the park down the street, action figures, sticks and leaves, etc. It was just for a short time and I grew out of it, but that had real potential for disaster. A small group of us would go camping almost every night during the summer and at least Fridays during the school year. One night we threw a can of spray paint in the fire and the resulting explosion triggered an addiction we didn't know we had. We ended up blowing up at least one can a trip for 5 years. We saved all the ones we could find and had over 500 cans. We would climb trees or a ladder we lashed between two trees that was 15-20 high and 10 from the fire, but never once got injured despite some close calls. Cans exploding immediately right in our faces. Logs being launched out of the pit. Shrapnel from the can and or the bull in the paint would shoot between us while on the ladder. Oh, and we were drunk most of the time too. It was dumb as hell, but we never paid the price for it though, so it's one of my favorite high school era memories. And now we are experts in hucking dangerous shit in a fire, so we've got that going for us. Was walking through a forest at night in England with my wife when we come across some kids and a campfire right off the path. As we walked past an aerosol can that was apparently already tossed in the fire exploded. Got debris in my wife's shirt and scarred her. Bottle rocket wars at close quarters. No glasses. PVC pipe with a cap on one end makes the best bottle rocket launcher. You can even aim it. Evel Knieveling my BMX bike off jumps into roads while a friend was supposed to be watching for cars, but mostly stood there picking his nose looking at his untied shoelace. I grew up in the deep country. We had over 100 acres of rocky, hilly land with several creeks, and I had free roam of it from the time I can remember. I wandered several miles in every direction. Climbed trees, rode horses and dirt bikes, waded in snake-infested water, got covered in ticks, stickers, and a few leeches. My cousins and I swam in creeks by splashing away snakes and huge snapping turtles. We swung on vines and climbed up in decrepit old barns. I can't imagine letting my kids have that kind of freedom in this day and age. Most of the time my mother had no idea where I was. I somehow never had many serious injuries. Probably the worst was getting thrown off my horse and landing on my tailbone so hard it knocked me out, or getting kicked in the head by a cow. So at this water park called Sklitterborn, IDK, it's weird and it's in America, so IDK, there is a river that goes by the side of it that's not technically part of the park, but you can easily get in and out of it from the park, and people in tubes float down the river quite a bit. But there's this one part where there is a dam with a gap for the tubes, but there's a bit of rapids after that somehow has a flat rock that you can stand on and the current will push you, but there's enough rocks that it's definitely not a good idea to do that. So me and the boys, being the idiots we are, jump in the river without tubes to let the current pull us through the rapids. Note that the current is really ducking fast, so if you hit a rock you'll probably break something, or at least get a bad bruise. We get out unscathed and decided, you know what, duck waiting in lines, let's do this for 5 hours, and we did. Until one time I was going through, and after the rapids the river gets suddenly deeper and there was a whirlpool that I didn't know about that sucked me down. In the 30 seconds I was down there I decided I was gonna drown to death, but at the final moments it spit me back up gasping for air and I landed safely on the bank. I informed my friends of this, and then we decided to do it again for 15 minutes until a park employee told us to stop cause small children were following our lead, and we headed back to the park. Hey PSSST, please subscribe and like.